kicks it out. Smart fakes. Inside. Tatum spins and he puts it in. Celtics go up by one.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Celtics Talk podcast. I got to tell you, Nick Friedell from ESPN, it's weird for me to even be at games. I've been locked in the studio for most of the season. Well, I picked a good one to come out of hibernation for. And, and most excitedly because I tried to tell you before you signed up for the Kyrie experience what it would be like. And so let's just start there because that's going to be the storyline that dominates the night. Kyrie getting into it with the Boston fans and not getting the win either. What was that postgame like when you tried to press him a little bit on his hostility with the crowd?
Yeah, he didn't like that word, but Mr. Forsberg, you prepared me for what it was going to be like day in and day out with Kyrie. And the truth is, I actually have enjoyed talking to him over these last few months, but it is always an intriguing back and forth because you're never quite sure which direction he's going to go with all this. But very clearly, you know way better than I do, he has a long history here. This is like a breakup that went very bad. And every time that the two parties see each other, Kyrie and the Celtics fans, it just brings back all these old, really bad memories. And that's what we saw again post-game.
He used the scorn lover line the last time he was here, and a lot of Celtics fans were like, well, blah, blah, you know, and I get it because, like, look, he was the one who decided to walk away. Here's the hard part, I think, for him is that if he had won, he would have been peacocking around like, look what I did. I came back into this place and I showed them what they're missing, but they lost. And so that only elevated his birds and sayings to people walking off the court. So what do you think happens from here? That's the big, not that it already just starts spinning in the head, but like, that's where my mind goes. Okay, like he gave it his best shot and it wasn't enough to win this game. How do you think Kyrie reacts in the aftermath?
Knowing Kyrie and the competitor that he has shown to be, I would be very surprised if he comes out and lays an egg now in game 2 on Wednesday. But Chris, this is the issue for Kyrie. He was awesome in game 1 and they still couldn't win. And in large part, credit to the Celtics defense because their defense, especially on KD, was some of the best I've seen all year. They were all over him. And it wasn't just one person. It was everybody always keeping an eye on what he was doing. But you've got to believe that Kyrie wants to keep giving Boston the exact type of performance that we saw today. And to the Boston fans, and we know there are a ton of them out there, booing him doesn't really seem to be doing much. It's only pissing him off more to a point where he's like, all right, I'm going to go knock down some more shots. So I don't know if that is the strategy that you want to go into in these moments.
That's all I could think throughout the game was this is a little bit counterproductive. And here's the crazy part. That 3 he hits over Smart with 45 seconds to go to give him the 3-point lead was directly in front of whatever fans were chirping him the most and where he might have given a little salute to earlier in the game. And so he was clearly making it a point, like right there to be like, hey, you're going to taunt me. I'm going to hit some big shots. I do wonder. I mean, the only reason I bring it up is because I've lived it and I've seen, like, okay, put it this way. 2018-19, you might have been there. I think you were. The Celtics go up to Celtics win game 1 against Milwaukee. Kyrie's great. Like they've already just swept the Indiana Pacers. Like they're as rolling as a team can roll. And this was the year that Kyrie told us all, hey, don't worry. Like we're going to flip the switch.
It's all going to happen.
And then we got to the playoffs. We're like, oh my God, he was right. And then the next thing we know in Milwaukee, he's like, I'm just going to guide Giannis the rest of the series. And we're all like, well, not sure that's the strategy.
That one's going to work.
Not sure that's the one that Brad Stevens drew up. So I do wonder, like, does this go sideways? Now, maybe it won't matter until after game 2. Maybe they even it up and this is all a moot point. And we're all sitting here just whatever. But I wonder if it starts to go bad if Kyrie is when Kyrie just doesn't feel it anymore, it's a switch that flips and it's just that in the other way, in the off position, and it's hard to recover. I want to get your take on watching the Celtics. What you might not know watching them up close, as good as they've been over the last 3 months, and probably one of the best teams in basketball, like maybe up there with Phoenix. They haven't won a lot of close games. And so when Kyrie hits that 3, same deal. I'm like, this probably isn't going to go the right way. I don't know. And I actually loved what they did. Like they went and got the 2 and then, Marcus Smart hunting and finding JT on the final play. And like,
awesome.
They haven't done that often. What stood out to you watching Boston in those closing moments?
The lack of panic. so many teams through the years in that moment, they're either trying to rush a three, that's not a good look, or they're trying to get into a set that doesn't really click the way you think, and then they panic and they don't get what they need. To go in and have that kind of deep breath, and everybody went, we're okay. And those 2 quick points were important. But when you watch that replay of that final possession and the Tatum turn right down there on the blocks, they got KD. He was just kind of looking around and he got lost a little bit. The Celtics executed perfectly. And I give a ton of credit, not only to Tatum and everybody who was out there, but the coaching staff and Ime for all that was going on in that moment. When you are prepared like that, to me, when you watch a team like that, that goes right back to coaching. When you have that type of ability to execute when it looks like everything is breaking apart and the seconds are running off the clock, especially after Kyrie hit that shot, the Celtics deserve all the credit for how they handled that late game situation.
So again, and that's what I walk away. If we didn't have the Kyrie thing hovering over this game, I think for me the biggest takeaway would be Celtics in crunch time. They were like 1-4 in their last 5. They'd only played 15 crunch time games in calendar year 2022. They were 7-8. Lost to the Mavericks in a big game when KG's number was getting retired. Lost to the Heat when they had the number 1 seed was sort of up for grab. And I just said, I don't know. Like in the playoffs, every game has that feel. Would the Celtics rise to the occasion? And remarkably, they did. What's crazy to me is like, and I've heard, and Ime does deserve, like that, for me, instant timeout, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's get it all set. How many times have we seen it? We're almost conditioned to believe, all right, timeout, get your play right.
Do you know why they didn't? And I don't know if he said this, I haven't gone back and looked at his post-game press conference. And maybe he wouldn't even identify this. But I think it was clearly like Kyrie was out there. That is a weak, exploitable defensive link. Dragic was still out there, I believe. And so I think they went quick with the idea of there's going to be matchups.
Yeah, go.
But even then, you have to trust that your players, because they all sort of looked over like, we're going? And then they went. And Derek White, gets that quick pass up to Jaylen Brown, who accelerates, really had nothing. Just like you said, it's like all of a sudden I'm looking at the clock and, heads are spinning because it's like 4 seconds, 3 seconds. I mean, to have the presence of mind to kick across court to Smart, who did have a great look. And if this was a year ago, if this was definitely 2 years ago, if this was definitely 3 years ago, Marcus Smart takes that shot. And they live with the result, which more often than not has tipped badly in those instances just because the Celtics haven't won a lot of buzzer beaters. But for him to have the presence of mind, he said it after. He said, you always have more time than you think. I don't know if that's true because there was like a fraction of a second before.
I didn't think there was much time left.
When he passed it, I said, oh my God, what is he doing?
Yeah.
And then to see it spin in off the Jayson Tatum layup is remarkable. Yeah. Biggest takeaway for Boston. Scal was giving me some grief. He said, how can you feel good about that? They kicked away a 15-point lead in a game they probably should have dominated. And I'm like, you watch Kyrie go for 40, have like an absolute dominant game, felt like you were going to lose in the final minute, and you still found a way to win and go up 1-0. And I said, ultimately, what do we matter at the end of these playoff games? Who won? Like, right? Like, it's as simple as it sounds. Like, I'd love to feel better about wins, but ultimately, it's one team's up 1-0 and one team's down 0-1.
And to your point, if you're the Celtics and you win that game, after the way that you defended KD, can you imagine if that shot doesn't go down and they screw up that final possession and you're like, Kevin Durant, for my money, the best player in the world still, he shoots it that poorly and you lose. And I know Kyrie was awesome. I mean, he was just awesome offensively. But
most of the game, I was like, wait, is something wrong? Like, that's not normal KD.
Right. And there's no, and you want to talk about how Kyrie's going to respond. Well, let's put some money down right now on how Kevin Durant's going to look in game 2, because he's got to be so frustrated as a competitor and as competitive as he is, knowing that if he had just shot a little bit better, they win that game. That it's not coming down to that final couple sequences there. So who knows how this series is going to play out on top of what we've gone through. Mr. Forsberg, these are 2 very evenly matched teams.
I love it.
These 2 teams, it's been going on for over a decade at this point, but these 2 teams, it feels a lot more intense than an Eastern Conference first rounder. And that was the hype going into the series. 100%. But watching that game, you're going, okay, these two teams don't really like each other. The Boston fans cannot stand Kyrie, and all these different storylines feed into what you see on the floor a little bit. And what we saw was a really, really strong game by two really good teams.
Yeah. I mean, and from a fan perspective or like just a media observer's perspective, I can't wait. Like this is going to be a banana series for a first round. And I can't wait to embrace that. For a Celtics fan, I just pray for them because their hearts are going to be like, like if it's going to be like this, I think there was a collective exhale at the end of that game, just like you said. Like,
right.
If you hold KD like that and you don't win that game, you're frustrated. And yet, there was some expectation, like, will they win that? Because I don't know. So it's like I think everyone's head is sort of spinning. Let's start spinning it ahead. What do you expect from the Nets in game 2?
I would expect them to get Kevin into the offense early and often on Wednesday because they know, and Steve Nash said it, he's Kevin Durant for a reason. They know he's not going to go 8 for 22 or 9 for 20, whatever he went and struggle that much. I would look for him to get going. And Kyrie knows that he can help push the pace, and they're going to lean on him because of the way he played on Sunday here. But when you watch Kevin, that is as much as I have seen him struggle. And anytime he struggled in the past.
Can you figure out, like everyone has that sort of game. Was there something the Celtics did that you noticed that was either different or – because I thought Tatum had some very, very good possessions on him, and it was clear Tatum was up for that moment. Conversely, I thought Tatum had some really bad possessions against Kyrie, which is maybe to be expected. Shiftier guard, tougher for a big guy to guard. But like Durant sometimes just felt like he missed. Like,
and that's what he hinted at too.
That's even worse. You almost want it to be your defense.
But what I would say is both Kevin and especially Steve Nash said, look, the plan was very clear early in the game. There will be a body on Kevin Durant at all times. And on top of that body, whether it's Tatum or otherwise, there's going to be other sets of eyes that are going, we're going to shade off of whoever is over here to make sure that Kevin and Kyrie don't get those really clean looks. So the Celtics game plan as far as KD went was really solid. And yeah, he missed some shots, but I would expect him to have a really big game on Wednesday.
I think their plan is pretty obvious. You put Marcus Smart on Kyrie and live with it. Like that's Defensive Player of the Year. And Kyrie, if he scores 39, you tip your cap and say,
go get him again.
Hey fans, stop
booing him. I mean, really, if we're got a message for all the Boston fans that watch your show here, booing him is not working. Something else.
And yet, I mean, it'll be hard for them not to do it because they love how much angst there is in the aftermath.
Right.
I will say this. My first comment to you after our first game show ended, I said, look, I just want to take you down memory lane a little bit. And we were in Philadelphia. And I forget if the Celtics lost that game or if they won that game. It was either the start of the streak or the game before the start of the streak. And it must have been they lost. Because I think Kyrie was coming off the floor in Philadelphia. Bad loss. This wasn't Philly when they're what they are now. And somebody screamed down something at Kyrie. And as he's entering the tunnel, he goes, S my D.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the Celtics ripped off a 16-game winning streak in the aftermath. And all of us, nerds were sitting there going, well, Kyrie sparked that by
got it going.
And he got a fine by the league and he paid the fine and he was, fine with it because the Celtics got cranking from there. So there was someone captured it for TikTok. I mean, as social media continues to evolve, walked off the crowd, some guy yells, "You suck." And he said, "My D," to that guy. And I mean, again, I get it. You're a competitor. You're mad. You lost the game. And I mean, it makes me chuckle because I have nothing invested. So I can just like watch it as a humorous video. It's either going to tip one of two ways. Either the Nets going to rip off 16 wins and win the NBA championship, or it could go the other way. Maybe the Celtics are just benefiting every time Kyrie says that phrase. But I have no idea what's going to happen. Let's end on this. Any other takeaways from Boston? Like, again, I love when people who don't watch him every day get kind of the up close version. I mean, for me, I'm like, if you haven't watched the Celtics in a while, you're like, is Al Horford really 35?
Right.
Tatum had some incredible moments, but I do think he can be even better than we saw tonight. It's good for him to get a game winner because that's sort of the next step in his evolution. What's your biggest takeaway watching?
I've only seen them live a couple times this year, but I would tell you that it ties back into what I thought as I was watching the final seconds wind down. They seem so well coached. All those guys, and we heard so much about the defense in that 2-3 month stretch where they were just killing teams and rattling off wins. That comes from your coaching staff. When you know where to be, confidence that you have, even when you have talented players like a Tatum or Jaylen Brown or Marcus Smart, it's all well and good, but you need to execute what you're being taught. And the Celtics do. And to watch it in place, and again, Kevin and Kyrie are on a different level. I mean, to me, as great as Jayson Tatum is, I would still take Kevin and Kyrie first and second in the draft of this series. But when you watch these two teams play, when you have a player as great as Tatum is, and then you have all these other guys that know where they need to be around him, the game plan is always solid, and this team is very clearly buying into the message that Ime and his staff have for them on a nightly basis.
Well, let me tell you about a little time when the Celtics were 18-21, and there might have been some Celtics fans clamoring for Ime Udoka to, I don't want to go so.
Where are you, Brad? Where have you gone?
And that's the problem when you have a coach that has proven it. There is probably even more difficulty, but so much credit goes to Ime for sticking with it, because so much of the turnaround was based on him just being like, we're going to play defense hard and we're going to figure it out offensively, but, just kind of endure the ups and downs. And to their credit, they did. I could have never imagined this, though. I certainly did not imagine Jayson Tatum hitting game winners over Kyrie Irving in the playoffs. So it has been a wild ride, and we're just getting started. This is game one. We'll see how long this series goes. I told you all, buckle up here on the Celtics Talk podcast, because it's going to get crazy. Actually, I have to end on this. What was it like seeing Scalabrine again?
I mean, I was praying for my back that I didn't get one of those. Boom! But I love Scal. I'll always love Scal, and it's always good to hear that voice in the background.
He was busting your chops about your questions.
But it was the respect after all the years. When you've lived it with Scal for as long as you and I have, there's something to be said for being in there day after day after day.
You'll be amazed. He's been the beacon of sunshine and puppy dogs all year. And then I get up to do the post-game show today, and he's like, I just don't really like them kicking away 15-point lead. I'm like, dude, you won the game. So I know, but he came around. He understood. And the best part, Ime Udoka shows up at film tomorrow and says, hey, guys, we didn't play to our standards.
There you go.
And then he just off to go. All right, I need everybody to go like, subscribe. Check us out on the YouTube page. Sorry about the light in the background. We're making the work with best we can if you're watching this online. Poor Nick is going in and out of focus, but we made it work. If you're listening on the audio version, just ignore everything I just said. We'll catch you next time on the Celtics Talk podcast.